In a few moments, you will have an experience which will seem completely real. It will be the result of your subconscious fears transformed to your conscious awareness. You have 5 seconds to terminate this tape. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another We Are So Back Wednesday, another BG-Cast Wednesday live podcast. Man, we have a lot to talk about. Today was a really interesting day, so I'm not going to get into it too much because I want to talk about it with my guest. We were kind of chatting about it before I started the show. So real quick, couple things. I want to thank all of the new subscribers and followers over on Rumble and YouTube. Thank you for joining the BG-Cast family where we learn together in this strange, unknown, uncharted territory this current batch of humanity has just entered into. And we definitely entered into it a little bit further today. But nonetheless, I want you to check out my first sponsor here. And we have Divine Creation Gifts. They are my friends over at the metaphysics shop that I've talked about on the show the past couple times. I just want to kind of show you the website real fast. And guys, definitely support a local homegrown business. All right. This is how we start New Earth. This is how we start to push forth energy into manifesting the existence we wish to see. And yes, go please support this local business, or this homegrown business, I should say. They're out in West Virginia, but they are not in Colorado. But go support these guys, man. We have great things. We have apparel and merch. We have apothecary and herbals, tools and supplies, crystals and jewelry. And you also get free shipping on orders over $50. So I want to say, definitely support them, guys. This is how we start the New Earth frequency. We start supporting the homegrown businesses in our community. We start working amongst ourselves, and we start to shut out this false matrix reality system, the societal Maya system. And also today, I have another person I want to talk about. And actually, he's a friend of mine. He's been on the show quite a few times. You guys know David the Lion. Yes, and I also want to talk about David because I'm dubbing him the title of the beginning of New Earth Entertainment. So David's film actually won Best Director at the New York Film Festival, and I want to kind of bring up his comic series too. So David actually sent me a limited first edition of his comic book. It's also available on Kindle. If you guys want to buy it on Kindle and read it on Kindle, I highly recommend you do that as well. But I would definitely buy an issue and support David. This comic was amazing. And one of the things I'm going to say is this is pure homegrown content, entertainment, stuff to enrich you, not get you caught up in the loosh farming, not get you caught in the viral psyops, okay? This is homegrown stuff made with a lot of heart. And I want you to check out David's movie too. I have his link tree and his Substack in both descriptions for the Rumble and the YouTube video. I'm going to bring up his link tree real quick. And yes, no, guys, support David. I actually still have his mug lump game from when we first started. And of course we have his videos here and stuff like that, and his movie Dear Lilith, I Love You. And yes, guys, I want you to go ahead and I want you to go give him a visit, man. Get one of his comic books. I know, Don, I am like so proud of David, dude. I can't even tell you how proud of I am. He is literally the official starter of New Earth Entertainment. That is, I'm dubbing David the title of New Earth Entertainment. He is the official facilitator. He's got a comic book series out. He's making films. And this is where we need to be putting our attention to, guys. We need to support people in our community. We need to support this homegrown content. We need to support all of this stuff that's made with heart and no narrative. You know what I mean? Not just completely doom scrolling our lives away and contributing to the loosh harvesting, the societal Maya, and false matrix reality. So definitely go follow David. His X account is on there. Watch the movie, buy the comic book. I'm telling you, you will not be disappointed. All right. Nonetheless, I've actually been looking forward to chatting with this guest for a very long time. We've kind of been in the process and the works for this show for a year. And she's actually a very smart individual, very, very sovereign, very, very discerning. And I look forward to chatting with her today about her story and some of the other weirdness we are experiencing at this point in time. So she is an intuitive Christian mystic who teaches applied anthroposophy and occultism, focusing on embodiment, trauma, the psychology of social behavior, and somatic practices. She actually has her own spiritual school too, guys. I'm going to tell you what, and I have the link for that in the description that you guys can check out if you want to check out any of her courses that she has to offer. But nonetheless, let me welcome to the stage Layton Elyas. Layton, what's up?
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
Definitely. I know. Like I said, we've been talking about this for a while, and I want to say I'm happy that you're okay, your partner's okay, you guys made it out of North Carolina okay, and you guys
Thank you.
have found a place to settle. Yeah, no, if you don't mind diving into that a little bit later, we can dive into that because I am convinced that was some kind of weather modification event.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely convinced. I mean, when we look at the science of hurricanes, they do not maintain strength over land, and they do not make it to Asheville, North Carolina, coming from where it came from,
Yeah.
and hitting a mountain town at full force. That doesn't happen. But nonetheless, because this is your first time on the show, I want to get to know you, and I'm sure all my listeners and viewers want to get to know you too. Let's talk about your awakening story. And you can TLDR it if you want. That's totally up to you. But I'm curious about what your burning bush moment was, or if there were multiple burning bush moments that you had that led your third eye to open and take a look at this world and see it in a different light.
Mm. It's really interesting because I feel like I kind of had the opposite experience that a lot of people do in the sense that I had a head injury when I was around the age of 5, and I do wonder if this kind of set this off, but I was experiencing clairvoyance and seeing things and having really interesting experiences around that age, to the point where I was saying stuff to my family before I was really old enough to know what a ghost was or something. I was explaining to them that that's what I was seeing. And um, because I was also raised in a religious cult, so it was very dogmatic, and my experiences were framed in a very fear-based perspective for that reason. So I was told that those things were demons and demonic. And from a young age, I had been convinced that I was under demonic attack. So this really closed me off to God because even though I believed in God, I thought God had it out for me. I was like, God doesn't like me. I'm evil or demonic or something like that. So that was my perspective. So even though I had this psychic awareness, I would not consider that my spiritual awakening because I felt very disconnected from God. And so I had all of these life events where I left. I left home the first time, and I was still a teen and was doing drugs and partying all the time and just trying to separate myself from everything that I had been raised in, especially being a lesbian. I had gone through conversion therapy and it really traumatized me. So I was just kind of rebelling, and I just it wasn't stemming from atheism or anything like that. It was, I still did believe in God, but I just thought that I was really beyond help because of my psychic experiences. So that being said, like I said, was really into drugs and alcohol. And I reached a point where I was in full blown addiction. I was going to meetings
Oh,
multiple times
there
to
we go.
help myself. Is it back?
Yep, you're back. You're back. Keep going.
Okay. I tried multiple times to get off drugs, and it just wasn't, I just couldn't do it. I didn't have the strength. And part of that was because I was lacking that spiritual connection. I felt very isolated in my experiences. I felt very alone, and I honestly didn't want to be alive. So I was really suicidal as well and constantly self-harming. And I reached a point where I eventually overdosed on a cocktail of a ton of cocaine, around 900 milligrams of Wellbutrin and alcohol on top of, I think, Strattera or something else like that that I had taken. And when I overdosed, I actually had a near-death experience. And in
Interesting.
this, yeah, in this near-death experience,
Interesting.
I hear people talk about their near-death experiences all the time, and it's like, oh, I saw heaven, I saw angels. That was not my experience at all. I
Mhm.
saw myself as a corpse, essentially, and it was kind of this out of body thing where I'm just viewing myself like this. And I was naked in this vision I was seeing, and it was just surrounded by darkness. I had all of these holes in my body, and ticks, the insect, they were hundreds of them were pouring out of the holes in my body. And I heard
Wow.
this voice overhead say to me verbatim, everything that you've been filling your life with has been sucking the life out of you. And when I heard that, it was like I suddenly understood everything. And I also somehow established this spiritual connection with God, with higher realms that I had not had previously. So I woke up and I flushed the drugs that, I know you're not supposed to do that, but that's what I did at the time. I flushed the drugs that I had. It was maybe a couple of weeks before my 19th birthday, so I was still pretty young. And I just decided in that moment, I'm not doing this anymore. But because I still had the the very Christian culty upbringing, I kind of convinced myself I need to go back to that because that's all that I knew. So I ended up going into a teen challenge program, which you may or may not know is a cult that's associated with Christian cults, and it's a very disturbing kind of religious program. However, being in there, I was away from the drugs and the bad influences and everything like that. And when I was in there for 9 months, and when I left, I went back into the cult, and I actually met my wife there. And so it was
Okay.
like my near death experience was kind of the first part of what I would say my spiritual awakening was. But then meeting my wife, we mirrored so much to each other, and it kind of
Mhm.
naturally just knocked me out of this dissociated state, because before it was like, oh well, if I'm going to be saved now from this experience, that means I can't be a lesbian, and I have to dissociate from this part of myself. So I identified as ex-gay and all of this stuff. And
Mhm.
I really believed that to be true about myself because I was in such a dissociated state. And so meeting her really kind of was a catalyst for the what had started as this awakening to really roll out into kind of what it was intended to be. And what's funny is when I was a teenager, when I was going through all of this addiction and all of this stuff, I was actually really into the occult, but it was the dark side of things. So I wasn't
Mhm.
practicing it, I was researching it. And I don't know if you had ever heard of or remember Vigilant Citizen would talk about uh, the Illuminati and MK Ultra and all of that stuff.
Mhm.
So back then, I had started my own blog, and I was talking about the Illuminati and MK Ultra in terms of entertainment, and Beyonce and Christina Aguilera and all of that stuff at the
Mhm.
time. So it's interesting looking back, seeing how I really laid that foundation for myself and didn't even know.
That's so interesting. I'm gonna say you're quite the spiritual warrior. I'm gonna hand you that because
Thank
you
you.
know to come from where you came from. I actually it's funny because every time I ask this question, and this is why I enjoy it, is I always see so much similarities in
Mm,
us who have the divine spark too. And I myself have had overdoses and
mm,
a near death experience from one of those overdoses. And I
mm,
think it's because when we and I I'm going to come out and say it because when us star seeds, us angel seeds, we incarnate here, we're trying to fill that void from where we left, and that's where
mm,
where a lot of these drugs come in, is we're trying to I've always theorized that we're trying to replicate the bliss of the higher realms.
absolutely.
We come here, and we leave this high frequency energetic state, and we get I joke it's the equivalent of trading in your Shelby Cobra Mustang for a beat up 1982 Honda hatchback Accord. And that's the equivalent of us coming into the physicality, and
Mm,
it's rough, it is. So I empathize, and I'm happy you decided to be your authentic self, and not go off as an ex-gay or try to live a life that wasn't your authentic life. So like props to that too. And I feel you on the religious cult mentality, because I joke that I grew up in the middle of the schism, man. My mom's side
mm.
of the family was Roman Catholic, and my dad's side was Greek Orthodox. So, I grew up in the middle of that schism. So I totally
Yeah,
get it. I want to say I'm glad you're here today and you're doing well for sure. Like that's an
thank
amazing
you.
story. So one thing I want to bring up, man, let's attack it from head on because I saw you did a short on X about this the other day. It
Mm,
was the victim mentality and cancel culture.
mm,
And I'm bringing this up because, this is one thing that I've been in my shows, and especially in my solo shows and my guest shows. I've been trying to really highlight how our collective has a vicious victim mentality at this point of time. And what this has done is it's caused, in my eyes, it's caused almost a over reciprocative effect of like the toxic emotional structure of our
mm,
collective, and it's now starting to permeate in some very strange ways. So one of the things I want to ask you is, let's kind of do like a little bit of a highlight of what you were talking about in that video, and let's kind of discuss some of the mind viruses, and the spiritual warfare that's kind of like thrown
mm.
at us on a daily basis in societal Maya, because there's quite a few mind viruses out there. And
Right.
I'll say the victim mentality and cancel culture is one. So if you don't mind, just kind of give us a little bit of a highlight of what you were talking about in that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for one, I think we're kind of in a place where everyone is constantly attacking everybody else all the time. And what I was talking about in my video was that we have this collective shame that we just have not dealt with. And for a lot
Yes.
of people, it's religious shame. But then there's also shame where if you say you grow up and you have parents that are very woke or something, and they're telling you that it's bad that you have white skin, and then you're internalizing this, and so it's, I think that on either side it doesn't really matter if it's left or right, there are going to be some manifestations of shame that are coming up in people. And so what is happening is we've learned that shame is unsafe within society. We've learned that it's, if something is shameful, it means we're going to be cast out from the tribe. And this is kind of an evolutionary instinct that we have within us to know that if we were cave people and the tribe cast us out, then we're not going to have access to shelter, we're not going to have access to food, maybe not to water, to community or safety. And so this instinct still exists within our nervous systems. And what ends up happening is that we have learned that this is kind of like this game of hot potato, where if I have this thing about me that society considers shameful, I can either leverage it to be a victim permanently so that I can kind of manipulate the situation around me in my favor. So this would be like if I were to walk around all the time saying that I deserve special treatment because I'm a lesbian, and then I'm refusing to heal from the conversion therapy and things that I went through because I actually want to use that to emotionally weaponize against other people to kind of get what I want. Or the other side of that is I'm not going to hold the shame and have this victim mentality manifest that way. I'm actually going to manifest it by throwing it like a hot potato onto someone else and forcing them to receive it as this kind of collective scapegoat. And so then they are collectively receiving the shame in this kind of really sick Orwellian mass ritual where
Yes.
it ends up really being like the 2 minute hate in 1984, where everybody is projecting so much hatred and energy at a specific person, and then we feel relieved, right? Collectively, it's like, oh, we have publicly shamed this person. We've put them to shame. We have said that they are unworthy for whatever reason, and we're not actually creating the change that we think that we're changing. We're just kind of putting the spotlight on one individual because it makes us feel like we're getting something done. And so we're either a victim in the sense of, I'm going to leverage this into identity politics to try and get whatever I want that way, or I'm going to be a victim of you, this random individual who has said an opinion that I disagree with or tweeted something in 2014 that was offensive to me. And now I'm going to hot potato this shame onto you, and everybody's going to do it collectively so that we don't have to face it within ourselves and actually look at where we are at a deficit within society.
I absolutely love what you just said, and I have something I want to say that, but real quick, a couple things from the audience. So we have Phil came in, Cosmic Voice said, in referring to the addiction aspect of our evolution. I believe it's also we forgot that we are a fragment of Creator God.
Absolutely.
Definitely agree with you there, Phil. And then Don Rogers from March 4th Productions wanted to ask, what would she suggest to help people with phantom guilt and shame, the residual emotions of healed trauma, guilt that no longer exists, but the situational somatic response still occurs?
That's a really good question. And a lot of it has to do with rewiring our neurotransmitters to feel a sense of felt safety within the body, because it's kind of like this programming that, as you know, exists when we're exposed to something again and again and again, and then the body starts to brace forward and say, this is actually unsafe, or there's something wrong here, even if that doesn't resonate with our values or how we actually feel about something. And so my personal practice with this, because I've had this come up with a lot of different things in my life, is to try and build a relationship with my body where I feel safe in these circumstances by exposing myself to them in a way where I'm present with myself. And I'm kind of telling myself beforehand, I'm going to go and expose myself to this thing. But what I do is I talk to myself the way that I would speak to a little child that's scared, because when we want to engage with the nervous system, the unconscious elements within the nervous system, that's really what we're engaging with. We're engaging with the part of ourselves that stayed frozen in time at this specific age where the shame was kind of built up as this egregore within us. And so we want to go back in time and minister to this little child within us, and let them know that they're safe in this experience, and then expose ourselves to it in very small ways, because if we put ourselves into it too quickly or in a way that's too broad, we're going to completely re-traumatize ourselves most of the time. And also, just in general, I think that creating an atmosphere of safety within our own bodies means that we speak up about the things that matter to us. We're not suppressing that voice, because the inner child is going to have felt, I couldn't speak up back then when I was shamed. I didn't have a voice. I couldn't share these parts of myself that are really important and really valuable. And so giving those aspects of us a voice when they didn't have one before, honoring our boundaries when we don't want to speak to a certain person, not out of shame, but because the body knows it's not beneficial. It's not going to actually help us. It won't be edifying to anybody involved. And kind of learning how to navigate. I'm going to create an environment of self-trust within my body so that even if something feels threatening, my body is not responding that way because it trusts me to listen to its initial cues and to walk away from something if it's not going to be healthy or beneficial. But it's also kind of building the resilience and capacity to sometimes be in uncomfortable situations that will trigger certain things, but we're doing it intentionally. We're doing it consciously.
I really like that. And I want to continue to talk about shame, but I want to ask you this as a personal question too, because
Yeah.
this is a huge reason why I'm a Kundalini yoga practitioner.
Right.
And this is a huge reason why I do Kundalini yoga, because it actually, Don was saying, great answer. Thank you. Good, pure gold advice. And, but that's what it does. It actually, what Kundalini Kriyas do is it puts you through a controlled trauma response. It does. And it puts you in a controlled setting where you're almost pushing the body through a trauma response. And also what it's doing is it's opening up that fascia.
Yes.
It's starting to open the fascia. It's starting to release that stored energy from that trauma. And it's actually, what it's doing is it's almost, in some ways, it's alchemizing it. It's alchemizing it to be used for a higher purpose. So, like, I don't know if you've ever had any experiences with any kind of internal alchemy, and if this has potentially, like, you know, helped you overcome anything, or you've recommended it to people. Because I know in mystic, when it comes to mystic Christianity, I mean, I'm a huge believer that Jesus was a Kriya yogi. I mean,
Right.
you look at I mean, dude, Mahatma Babaji talked about him in the texts, man. He's even at the Yogananda Institute as a Kriya yoga master, you know what I mean? So, like, I'm just wondering, maybe if in your life, have you ever come across something like this that has helped you or helped others?
Oh yeah, all the time. And I mean, I feel that I often have very somatic meditation experiences where and I also practice medical intuition too. And so this kind of ties into my experiences where I can compare it to Miss Frizzle from oh my
Magic
gosh.
School Bus?
Yes,
The
Magic
Magic
School
School
Bus.
Bus? Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like
yeah.
I'm inside of myself in this way that I don't know how to explain. And if I'm doing a medical intuition reading on another person, that I'm doing this hands-on with them. And I'm seeing this alchemical process that's happening that to me is kind of like the way that I personally view it through my lexicon is an interaction with the black sun that is burning and purifying all of these things. But the black sun can be very destructive and cannibalistic if it's not harnessed the correct way, much like Kundalini. If someone comes into that in a way that where it's awakened prematurely, it can really cause problems for them. And that's why it's important to undergo training and really work with a teacher or someone who can guide you through that sometimes if you're in a place where you can't really go through that on your own. And so I see it as those black sun forces kind of working through me to transmute all of these things and purify them upward into the white sun. And I love that because I always get that visual of it happening, but I don't see it in the sense of, oh, that means that that the shadow no longer exists. I see it as the shadow being uplifted and leveraged, so that, because I believe that every quality we have within us, it has its lowest point but also its highest point. So if I have anger, for example, I could express that in a way that is unhealthy or that's toxic or destructive. But I could also express that in a way to enact justice and bring clarity and truth and have it be that a force that is cutting in a way that is actually going to be very healing and beneficial versus cutting for the sake of cutting.
I get you. Well, dude, I'm like, this is amazing. That sounds really cool with that visual. I was saying that sounds really cool with that visualization. And, that's something, I think that's something a lot of people negate the power of, is our imagination and visualization,
Yes.
because I'm a huge believer that symbolism is the is the prime language in this
Mm.
reality. And written and verbal language is secondary. And when we have that symbolism in our imagination and we're using that and we're putting forth that intention and that energy, that's actually extremely powerful. And I think like a
Yes.
lot of people negate that. And I'm going to kind of hop back to the shame thing real quick because I wanted to say something about that and then we can move forward. But I liked how you kind of laid out one of the aspects of the collective shame that we see. And the aspect I was going to talk to you about too is, I mean, the shame conditioning ultimately, I think, is something that strips our power as
Yes.
well. It's and I call it the shame. I mean, everybody's heard it throughout their life. Have you no shame? That exact word. And it's like we're supposed to have shame. What? Like, what's
Yeah.
going on here? Like, why should I have shame? And so I think that even kind of plays into what you were talking about others casting that shame on others, and, you know, in this kind of weird, it's a dark ritual of sorts. And it all ties down into that conditioning, that societal Maya conditioning, because all they want to do as soon as you enter this world, and you know, one of the things I talk about on this show a lot is as soon as you enter this world, you are conditioned to look outside of yourself. You are conditioned to look outside of yourself for love, validation, you know, the answers to the bigger questions in life. And you're immediately told that unless you were born into something, you're going to amount to nothing. And this is part of that collective shame conditioning that it permeates itself in this society. And we almost see that in the progress of our spiritual evolution. We see it almost the Smith effect is kind of what I was going to call it. You know, we start to better ourselves. We start to evolve consciously. We start to evolve on a conscious, a mental, emotional, and a psychological level. And we start to improve ourselves. And it almost seems like that collective shame starts
Mm.
to rise in the people around you, and you start getting attacked for bettering yourself, and everybody's looking
Mhm.
right. And this is the other side of it. And I liked what you were saying about it too, on how it's being used almost as a weapon of
Mm.
sorts in this collective society. But then it's a weapon that not only we're using against each other, but it's a weapon that's used on us
Mm.
as well. And it's ultimately something, you know, that I think we're the people like us, the ones who are doing the work and actually putting forth the inner work and the healing. You know, I'm seeing hopefully that we can have some kind of ripple effect in the collective consciousness at this point, because ultimately we shouldn't have any shame. You know, we're all these beautiful human beings, man. We all have got something amazing, you know, to bring to the table in this temporary human ride. You know, so so what are your thoughts on that aspect of the shame situation? Because I think this we're seeing it play out in full effect on both sides of the spectrum.
Well, I really liked what you said about it taking our power away, because it brings to mind the saying, with great power comes great responsibility. But it also goes the other way, where if we can't take responsibility, then we lose power. And so that's kind of what has happened. Is it's actually not that scary to take responsibility, but we've been conditioned to believe that it is, because if we own certain aspects of ourselves, we could get canceled or ostracized from society, or completely cut off. And so we learn to give that responsibility up and to hand it over to people that we have deemed more responsible, which is the government, which, as we know, they are not good stewards or
Mhm.
trustworthy people. And so because they have the responsibility, now they have the power, or at least they are in a position where they feel like they do. And realistically, when we kind of come back into that on our own and choose to begin to take responsibility of things that feel terrifying, we can kind of take that back. And I have felt that way too, where even before putting myself out there on the internet. And I'm also in a very public detransition lawsuit, because I transitioned when I was much younger to, well, I say transitioned to male. It's not possible to change sex. You can't do that. But I took cross sex hormones for 3 years, and then came off of them. And I've been in a public medical malpractice lawsuit because of that. And when you are put in the public eye in any way, shape, or form, you will receive so much backlash and death threats and character attacks and all of these things. And at first, it was very humiliating because I was being doxxed and having so many things about my life just exposed and blog posts and all of these things. And I just realized that I can only be shamed if I'm ashamed. And if I own
Absolutely.
these aspects of myself, then I can't be. And I think that applies to everything. So I think that this collective shame is an opportunity for us to actually enter into much deeper, more embodied relationships with ourselves, because it forces us to kind of reconcile with certain things. But also, what ends up happening is when we don't reconcile with those things, it's not just that they manifest in dark ways in our own lives, but collectively it manifests as this mass shame egregore that ends up becoming a cause for violence and destruction and all of these things.
So, if you don't mind, and if you do, that's okay. You can say you do mind. If you don't mind, what are your thoughts on this whole situation at this point in time? Because in a lot of ways, I've seen it kind of come into the spiritual community in some very interesting ways as well. And I'm just going to kind of be straight to the point. How do you feel
Go for it.
about making that move? I mean, do you feel like potentially this is a mind virus of some kind that's kind of like permeating our collective, or do you feel there is something legitimate behind this? I mean, I just want to get your take on it because we hear so much from both sides of the bipartisan system on their opinions on it, and I'd really like to get an opinion outside of that, and I think that would be awesome if you don't mind doing that, because hearing it from somebody who's actually gone through it, as opposed
Mm,
to what we see on the news, what we see on TV, and all of that, it adds a different kind of perspective for everyone.
mm.
So yeah, if you don't mind, what are your thoughts and opinions on transitioning at this point? And do you think this is potentially a mind virus, or is there something legitimate to it?
Mm. So it's complicated because I think it's really important. First of all, I always, when I talk about this kind of thing, say at some point that we need to separate individuals who are struggling with what they believe is gender dysphoria
Hmm.
from, from the elite, as they like to call themselves, who
Hmm.
like to leverage those things and kind of jump in on these experiences in order to further certain agendas, because there's a lot that's going on there. I personally believe that gender dysphoria is the manifestation of severe dissociation and trauma. That doesn't mean
Hmm.
that I don't think that some people feel as though they benefit from transition. I have friends who identify as trans who feel as though there wouldn't be any other option for them. And I know when I think of my own life, I've always struggled with body dysmorphia and just feeling not great about my physical appearance, feeling like I don't look the best. Or and when I look at myself in the mirror, I've had so many times throughout my life where what I see back feels so distorted, and I know it's distorted because people are telling me you don't look like this, when I say that
Hmm.
that's how I think I look. So I think that there are absolutely these mass egregores that when we have been traumatized in some way, this can be in this incarnation, it could be from past lives. There's some sort of disconnect that is happening, and some sort of dissociation that is happening there. And then on top of that, I think in the past it was probably more likely that there were people who, I believe, from my perspective, that a female has a male or a masculine spiritual polarity, and that males have
Hmm.
a feminine spiritual polarity, and and for some individuals they can feel more connected to one polarity than the other. I know that I have really had to work to balance that because I started off with this very inverted kind of dark feminine polarity. And then in order to balance that, I shot over into this very masculine polarity, which didn't work. And now, it's taken me some time to kind of learn how to balance that. So I think that's one element of things. I also think that people, maybe their last incarnation, they were the opposite sex, and then because there was some sort of disconnection that's happened, they now resonate with that. However, what I really think is happening now is, because I think that's kind of what was going on before, and I'm sure that still happens here and there now, but I think what's happening now is that there has become this mass egregore of gender dysphoria, that through the news and media and the school system and all of these things, celebrity culture, all of these things is starting to attach to the minds of children and young adults and vulnerable people, and make them question about themselves. Is this who I really am? And so I do think that there is a social contagion aspect, but my belief is that social contagions have a spiritual root. And then I think when it comes to transition, my stance is I'm very against children transitioning. I don't think that should ever happen. I think when it comes to adults transitioning, it's not as cut and dry to say that if someone can consent because of their age, that they should be able to move forward with transition. I think that extensive trauma therapy would have to be undergone. And I'm very against the ideology that says that anyone is born in the wrong body. I think it's one thing to say that the phenomenon of gender dysphoria exists. That's a real thing. People experience that, people feel that, and it causes them pain. And we really can't deny that. However, to make that mean that someone has been born in the wrong body is to say that God made a mistake. And I don't believe things like that are a mistake. Just like I don't believe that if someone is born with some sort of disability, that is a mistake. And I don't believe that, me being a lesbian is a mistake. All of these things, I think, yeah, I think it's and I do think that a lot of times these things can be karmic and intended to teach us certain things. However, I think for the most part, we do have this spiritual social contagion happening that is really hijacking children and vulnerable people. And I know in my own experience, I'm not allowed to talk too much about the lawsuit aspect, but I will say
That's
that.
okay. I completely understand. Yeah.
Thank you. But I will say that the one of the practitioners that I'm suing had me essentially recruiting people who had both dissociative disorders, which at the time of my transition, I had been diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder because I had come out of a religious cult and had extensive religious trauma, sexual trauma, all of these things. I obviously am recovered from that and have been for many years, which is how I got into somatics and all of those things. But this practitioner had me essentially going into groups, finding people who had both dissociative disorders as well as gender dysphoria or something like that. And that's not hard to find, because for most people that have gender dysphoria, they also have severe dissociative disorders. And when you're dissociated from yourself in any way, you are automatically significantly more susceptible. So I think the dissociation is kind of the beginning phases of that, and then everything else follows.
I want to thank you for your completely unbiased and honest opinion on that, and that's kind of what I like to hear, because we, like I said, I mean, we can't believe anything anymore at this point. Anything that we see on the news, anything that we see on TV. So I'm grateful that you decided to share that with us tonight. I appreciate that, and I hope everything does work out really smoothly with that lawsuit. I do. I hope it plays out in your favor for sure. So The one thing I want to kind of start to bring up now is, I mean, we were talking about these egregore contagions, these conscious contagions kind of coming into our society. One thing I like to ask a lot of guests, especially you and how experienced you are and everything you've kind of been through in your own spiritual evolution. And I've asked this question a few times, but I really want to get your take on it because of where you come from and your different set of things that you went through in your life. So we're obviously undergoing spiritual warfare right now. That's a huge thing. We can't deny it. But of course, us on our spiritual evolution, what we try to do is we try to channel our focus into creating and manifesting that joyful, abundant life that we want to live, our highest possible timeline, the one that is going to bring us closer to, becoming closer with our higher selves and channeling that into this existence. But sometimes I feel like, we can lose sight of the fact that we're being bombarded with spiritual warfare on a quite consistent basis. And sometimes I feel like that can accidentally leave us open to allowing that stuff in. So one of the things I want to ask you is, what do you feel is a good way to balance this in our everyday lives and our subjective experiences? Maintaining a focus on our most joyful, abundant timeline and manifesting the new earth frequency, and also holding in our awareness that we are being bombarded with spiritual warfare. So kind of in your eyes and in your thoughts, what do you think is a good balance? What's a good way to approach this so we can still continue to focus on healing ourselves but not leaving ourselves open to any kind of spiritual attacks?
That's a really good question. For me personally, I woke up this morning, and by the time I checked Twitter, there's all of this violence on the For You page, and it's just constantly all of this stuff. And my response to that initially was to go for a very, very long walk and breathe and not take my phone with me, and just spend time in nature and connecting with God that way, connecting with people that way with no phone. I think it's important that we balance out our social media usage and phone usage with how often we are immersed in nature, because nature is going to be our most organic existence and our ever-present reality. And once we log into social media, there is so much. I've always considered media to be a form of trauma-based mind control. I think it's pretty clear these days that is accurate. And I think that we can engage with it in a way that is very responsible by limiting it, limiting our exposure to it, and engaging in aftercare after we have seen things that are very violent and traumatic and chaotic, because it is disruptive to the nervous system. I think anything that we do to help our nervous system, and for me, this is things like, living a mostly healthy lifestyle, engaging in exercise and meditation, things that are going to ground you into the body, avoiding things that are going to constantly pull you out of the body. And avoiding things that are going to keep you in a state of fear. So, for example, years ago, I loved watching horror movies. I really enjoyed them, but I noticed that they kept my nervous system in a state of hypervigilance. And not everyone's going to feel that way, but that's how I felt. And it was important for me to honor that that's how I felt, and kind of start paying attention to, okay, how do I make sure that everything that I have going on in my life is supporting my nervous system? Because every time we turn on the news, every time we hear a radio station or something, we are being bombarded with all of these things that are intended to dysregulate us. So I think it's important to prioritize our health, prioritize our mental health, the purity of our hearts, making sure that we aren't letting ourselves be traumatized 24/7, and that we're going out and we're laughing with our friends, and we're engaging in nature, and we're engaging in play, and in the act of creating different things, however that looks for you. It could be cooking, it could be painting or going outside and carving wood or tending to a garden, really anything that's going to kind of anchor us back into the body. And then meditation, I think, is really important too, because it kind of undoes this constant cortisol attack on the nervous system.
That was an amazing answer, and I think you are absolutely spot on. And one of the things I've even started to kind of notice, I have a lot. I wrote down some things I want to talk to you about. Actually, what you just said. One of the things I've noticed is it seems like a lot of so one thing I talk about a lot is as above, so below, with the spiritual and the digital realm. And it's like that. I mean, we're talking two realms of energy. We're talking realms of frequency, communication, and things like that. And this is why I'm always been very discerning with things like artificial intelligence,
Right.
because I mean, it's very possible that a spiritual entity could
Mhm.
utilize artificial intelligence as some kind of avatar
Mhm.
to communicate with us here in the physical realm. But the one thing I was going to say is I think a lot of social media sites in general have almost developed like their own egregoric energies themselves.
Yes.
And I've noticed this kind of start to play out, especially on X. X is the
Mm.
one that I see it the most on. But I see it too. It's on Facebook, it's on Instagram, it's on all of them. And it's funny because I've noticed like how the egregoric energies affect people, like
Mm.
from these different social media sites. Because when you're like, let's say you're following somebody on Facebook, or you're friends with somebody on Facebook, but you're also following them on X, it's almost like you're dealing with two different people. It's very
Yes.
strange. It's like something I've noticed. It's almost like this kind of like weird energy that
Mm.
comes over. And this is why I talk about as above, so below, with the spiritual and the digital. These realms can correlate and they can intertwine. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that's a possibility?
Oh, absolutely. And, even for me, I think TikTok is the worst social media app. I really don't like. I don't like being on there, but at the same time, there's part of me that wants to continue sharing there because it's the worst social media app. And that's actually one of the reasons why I came back on X too, because I was off of there. I just deleted my entire account for a year, which was a really good break, because the more that people interact with you on there, and everyone is kind of projecting the same wavelength of thought forms onto you. And if you're a sensitive individual, then it can really begin to kind of degrade you and wear you down. And I think that especially with AI being in the picture, people, these technologies, they reflect the level of consciousness that we're just at collectively. And you know that. And
Yeah.
so when the majority of people are operating from this lower consciousness that is based in the realm of their own pain body and their own trauma. It's kind of like, I mean, we this is why people are using ChatGPT as a therapist and things like that, is because we have
Mhm.
so much unresolved pain and so much unresolved trauma. But then what can end up happening is that technology brings that out of us. And if we aren't if we aren't intentional, then that won't be a moment of transmutation for us, and it will instead just
Mhm.
continue to kind of perpetuate it. However, I think that there have been several instances where people are seeing the truth of this through certain experiences. For example, I don't know if you followed the woman Kendra and her psychiatrist, that she said that she was in love with, and she was talking to Chat GBT, and it was telling her he's in love with you too, and he's abusive, and all of these things, that it was just mirroring back to her what she believed.
She
But it
thought.
wasn't, when you look at the facts, it was not actually rooted in reality. And so a lot of people seeing those types of situations play out are starting to say, hey, maybe we have to deal with this, because if we don't, then what's going to happen is this kind of magnification through technology that bleeds into our reality and begins to kind of lower us all even more collectively and create this false realm around us.
Oh, I completely agree. And I mean, this is where, we kind of start to see how our conditioning in our society too. I mean, like I was even just looking at it the other day. I mean, there's people marrying AI girlfriends. There's people marrying,
Yes.
doing chat GPT husbands, and even starting to, I guess, Grok in Japan just released this new hentai chick version of itself, where if you kind of like put and I always say beware of the Japanese sex robots on the show, but this is even going even further because it
Right.
is. Grok just released it's like this hentai chick, and it's like as you build like rapport with her, she starts to become naked. She starts to take her clothes off. And then pretty soon, if like you spend enough time on the app, from what they're saying, she'll be completely nude. And like we have like all these men and all these women, man, because in our society, the digital world has just completely taken over. There's no more human connection. There's no human touch. There's no more. There's
Right.
no more human camaraderie. There's not even any community at this point,
Yes.
really, when we're looking at it from that. So we see kind of the effects happening from this at this point in
Mhm.
time. And I want to completely agree with you. Said it is. It's this bleed over of the digital into our physical density that we're currently in, and it's starting to manifest in some very, very strange ways. So like, no, I wanted to say I completely agree with you. Real quick, I wanted to hop back to the horror movie thing because I wrote something down about that. And I want to know if you've noticed too. So a big reason I stopped watching horror movies is they demonize the middle path. They demonize the esoteric. I don't know if you saw. I've talked about this on the show before, but I'm sorry, but I definitely want to get her take before, so I move forward. But I don't know if you saw the trailer. They redid I Know What You Did Last Summer. Right. And they redid it. Of course, we all we gets revamps now because original thought and original creation is dangerous. So they have
Right.
to revamp everything. So the premise of this is these girls find this tarot deck, and they start playing with the tarot deck, and because they started playing with this tarot deck, that's why all of these murders and these killings start to happen.
Mm.
And I've noticed this in a few horror movies. It seems to demonize the middle path. It seems to put the esoteric concepts on a sort of negative display,
Right.
and in order to almost kind of cause a fear response in people from it. And
Mm.
we look at our society right now. You have two accepted routes you can go when it comes to the spiritual. You can be a nihilistic atheist, and that's kind of what I've coined it, because I know real atheists that still believe in being a good person, still
Right.
believe in community and all of that, and that people only have each other. And those are real atheists, and I give them a world of I give them a world of props that they at least hold in their mind that they need to be good people.
Mm.
But then I have this group I call the nihilistic atheists, and these are the ones that have the mentality. If God doesn't exist and everything is pointless, I can do what I want. I could say what I want. I could be whatever I want to people and all this. And I'm like, but that's one of the accepted roads you can take, or you can be dogmatic and organized religion. Yep, that's an
Right.
okay road in the collective eye for you to take as well. But stay away from the middle path. No, we don't want you walking down the middle path. And so I'm just curious if maybe in you watching horror movies, have you noticed that demonization of esotericism and the occult? And it just happens to be like clockwork in these movies.
Mm. I have. From my perspective, the way that I would feel when I would watch certain movies, that there was this active change in my nervous system of being attuned to this fear response, and
Mhm.
I saw it definitely as demonizing the middle path and esoterica, absolutely. But also as just kind of these blatant rituals where they're trying to use creation, to trap people into the dark occult, not consciously, but on these unconscious levels within
Mhm.
their nervous system, where they're kind of looping in these trauma states. And it's very similar to what they do in MK Ultra, right? It's how do I get you into this trauma state that you can't get out of, and you're also going to be very dissociated at the same time. And then you continue to be in those trauma states long enough, you become very vulnerable and susceptible to outside programming, because the longer you engage with something like that, the more hypnotic it becomes. And we end up in those states where programming is able to seep into our consciousness and on very deep levels. And so I don't think that that applies to all horror movies, but there were definitely some that I watched that very much felt like that. One of my favorite horror movies, and I saw the original and also the remake, is Suspiria. And I thought that Suspiria absolutely is part of that as well. And I think it just shows the inversion of the dark feminine as well. And I think that's what happens with a lot of these things, is they are showing us occult truths, but they're inverting it into the darkest aspect that it possibly can. And then it initiates us, if we're sensitive individuals, into those darker aspects. And so I even felt that really being stirred up within myself when I would watch it. And I was really into Suspiria, so I would watch it very often. I owned it and the remake, and and the way that I felt was as though I was being attuned into these things. And so I see it as also just this kind of unconscious initiation that we are consenting to by sitting down and watching it, but many people don't really know what's happening to them, and they're not sensitive enough to feel it.
I completely agree, and it is. It's almost like it's tuning you, and it's funny because I have something I want to say. But the last horror movie I watched, I don't even know if it was really a horror movie, but I consider it a little bit of a horror movie because of what it entailed. It was called Vivarium, and it was where these two people, they get trapped in a false reality
I
by
saw
these
that.
interdimensional reptilian-like
Yep.
beings.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I'm watching this and I'm like, holy shit, they're just laying it all out right now, aren't they?
Yep.
Because like they're
Yeah.
just laying it all out at this point. Because I was just like, I felt like that movie. I mean, it was trying to tune me, but at the same
Mm,
time, because of where I'm at in my spiritual evolution, I was looking at this. I'm like, no, you're not tuning me. I know exactly. You're showing me the truth of what's really going on right now. And
exactly.
I'm like, something like that. Also, too, like you were saying, like people being unaware. I feel like they do this kind of stuff on purpose, and I know you agree with me on this
Yeah.
because one of the things I say too is like they have our society so spread thin right now
Mhm.
that the lie of scarcity, the lie of division,
Right.
everything that is, and what it does is it puts us into this survival mindset, and where we cannot focus on being a creator in creation. All we become is a byproduct of creation when we're in that survival state. So this is how they do it too, man. It's like it is. They know that people are in this byproduct of creation state. They know they have stifled their creator abilities. And through that, what they do is they do that subconscious and unconscious initiations through this media, through the symbolism and stuff as well that we see on TV. And that's why I do say symbolism is the prime language here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because I mean the unconscious mind picks up on symbols at
Right.
such a deeply profound rate. The conscious mind might recognize it in an instant and walk by, but that symbol and its energy is stored in the subconscious mind and into the unconscious mind as well. So absolutely, I completely agree. Since you kind of brought it up, I kind of want to go this way on this topic. Let's talk about, I call it the dueling dance of the divine masculine and feminine energies right now
Mm.
that's actually going on. And I can tell you're really thrilled to talk about this. I actually love, because I mean I'm happy you balanced your Heros Gamos within you, after everything you've been through. So I like, I'm really excited to get your perspective on this. I mean, I call it the dueling dance of the divine masculine and feminine, and I feel personally too that's because the masculine and the feminine have been inverted at this
Mm.
time, and the way that they are portrayed in this society. So one of the things I kind of want to ask you is where do you feel at this point in time we are seeing the highest level of inversion when it comes to these energies? And I mean, at least in my opinion, I have a few thoughts, but I want to hear yours, because I think what they're doing is They're faking empowerment is what they
Right.
are. That's how they've inverted this. They're inverting it in a way to where on the surface level, it seems like empowerment, but when we get underneath it all, it's
Mhm.
actually oppression. It's giving our power away. So let me get your thoughts on this.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's so many directions that we could go with that.
You can go wherever you want. I'm very interested to hear what you have to say.
Well, even OnlyFans culture, first of all, is I think that as a woman from a young age, you're kind of conditioned by society to think that your worth is tied to your appearance and your body and things like that. And when we really start to see the inversion of the feminine within ourselves, then we utilize that as power, and it's power and manipulation against men. And so I think there's this element where there's all of this siphoning happening where women feel on one hand as if they have been so objectified that they're almost completely dissociated from that objectified image at this point and kind of projecting it as if it's its own doppelganger out there, and dissociating themselves from the reality of the harm that's actually coming to them by doing this kind of thing. And then on the same level, they feel very empowered, because they don't know what true empowerment feels like. And so I think most women have had this experience of one point, at one point or another, where you realize, oh, I can actually leverage this. I can leverage sex appeal to get what I want and to kind of manipulate different things. And that's something that you have to choose not to do. And that's what integrity is, right? But when we see the inversion of this, then we see that becoming very, very normalized. And I also see that kind of happening alongside what we were just talking about with the sex bots and things like that, where I think women feel like they have to now compete with literal sex robots or AI girlfriends and things like that. So then so many of them are actually willing to dehumanize themselves and dissociate in that way and project that persona. I don't know if you've heard, there were some people who were OnlyFans stars who actually, I wish I could remember the names off the top of my head, but they actually created their own AI systems for their customers to communicate with, so that their customers would feel like they were in some sort of relationship or connection with them. It's very strange and dystopian. And at that point, people are
Yes.
interacting with a type of egregore or doppelganger. And then I think another manifestation of this is when we see women just kind of being used as like birthing tanks, and that's it. And it's just, and so then it's like, well, we don't actually need a woman at all. We're going to create this robot. We're going to create a false womb within the robot, and we're going to just put an egg in there, fertilize it, and see what happens. And it's like a really dark dystopian place that we're in right now. But we're also, that's kind of mirroring this thing where women don't want to have children anymore, and they don't want to be mothers, and they're detaching themselves from that natural nurturing instinct that is present within all females. That it's not that every female is intended to be a mother by any means, but there's an epidemic where nobody wants to parent a child. No one wants to mother a child. No one wants to nurture a child anymore. And I think that is pretty concerning too. But there's so much that could be said about all of these things.
Well, no, and the one thing I really like that you brought up is you kind of brought up both sides of the objectification, because you were talking about not only just the OnlyFans, but you're talking about the birthing tank aspect of it, and that's just seeing a woman as somebody who's there to birth your kids, nothing
Right.
more, and there's so much more to that, and I do think eventually what's going to happen. But before I say that, I want to say I see it from the masculine side too, as being a man, with the Andrew Tates and all of these other people that are coming out. And, I number one, I believe true divine masculinity is not toxic at all. I
Right.
believe when a man has cultivated his and balanced his divine masculine with his divine feminine, and what this does is it activates something called the wild masculine.
Mhm.
And when you activate the wild masculine, a male's primordial Shakti is
Right.
actually running its course through him. He is unified with that energy. And to me, there's nothing toxic about that at all. But what I see coming out of the MGTOW and the male red pill crowd at this point, I see a lot. It's almost like I kind of joked like this is like, the inverted divine feminine caused like the not true feminist movement, but I'm going to call it the feminazi movement.
Right.
Because and kind of pushed the divine masculine archetype around, and then now what I kind of almost see is it's like this almost reverberation effect. Now like the divine masculine is like overarching itself back over the inverted feminine, and it's bringing out a lot of these what I would call really, if there is such a thing as toxic masculinity, yes,
Mm.
men that don't feel their feelings, men that are just concerned with material possessions, all of that stuff without understanding the spiritual nature of existence and how good a family can be, or how good being in contact with that, your emotions can actually be.
Mm.
So yeah, I kind of I see it at that side as on from that side all the time, and that's why I just try to be an example. That's the point I'm at. Like I just try to be an example,
Mm.
and I kind of divert my focus away from that too, because I look at some of the shit, I'm just like, come on, dude, like
Yeah.
like you're treating a woman like she's a piece of garbage. Like I don't
Mm.
agree with that. And just because you think like manpower and masculine power, no. And this is one thing another question I kind of want to dive into with you real quick before we kind of get into the juicy stuff about today and the things that happened today, because I definitely want to talk about that with you.
Yeah.
um where do you see the new roles of the divine masculine and the divine feminine starting to kind of come into a common place later down the road? Because what I
Mm.
feel is eventually going to happen is there is going to be a settlement, and we are going to be stepping into a new refined version of this energy. Or I don't even know if I would say new, maybe I would say the way it should be. It should have been all along. And one of the things, so I actually run a men's group, and I asked this question, so I definitely want to get a female perspective on this as well. I would kind of ask the question. I was like, where do you guys think the divine's masculine's purpose is going to be once this dueling dance settles down? And I kid you not, and it'll probably bring you great hope to hear this. Every single one of us said we are going to build a safe and secure and stable foundation for the divine feminine to be able to channel spirit fully.
Mm.
And I was like, oh man, I was happy. I feel like I made we're making progress. We're not in the red anymore, thankfully. But
Right.
I kind of want to get your thoughts on it too, though. Like, where do you see this eventually settling into, and where do you think how are these new roles going to emerge? Like, what is your vision of that?
Well, first of all, I love the word safe. And I had actually read an Instagram post this morning that to me felt like the complete embodiment of where the masculine is supposed to be. And it made me cry because I thought it was so beautiful. And it was a story about a little boy who had been given an iPad when he was maybe 9 years old. And his parents gave it to him to play Minecraft, but they didn't realize that he figured out how to access the internet. And so after a little bit of him having this iPad, they saw his search history and they realized that he had discovered pornography and that he was watching it all the time as a 9 year old. And the dad's response was so beautiful and really moving to me because he didn't shame his son. He didn't embarrass him or guilt him or make him or create this traumatic moment for him that would then carry over into the rest of his life. He took him away on kind of a father son retreat, and basically just at first they didn't even speak about what had happened. They were just doing guy stuff together and hanging out and really building and establishing that trust and that relationship again. And then eventually he brought it up and just asked him from a curious place, how did it feel to see those things? What were you experiencing in your body? All of these kinds of things. And also letting him know, we're not angry with you. There's nothing to be ashamed of. It actually makes sense that when you looked at these images, that you had this response. That makes sense. And he was just loving on him, caring for him, and gently guiding him while also explaining, this isn't content for children, and this is not something, the images you were seeing, they were unkind to women, and kind of talking to him, and leading him in a way that was both gentle but also fierce, in a way that wasn't going to traumatize him and create further shame, but was going to guide him and show him what it meant to be a leader and what it meant to be a man. And so I thought that was a really great example of how a father should be, because I unfortunately know so many people who, men included, who did not have that kind of experience with their fathers growing up, and who felt a deep sense of shame instilled in them from their father. And then when it comes to relationships between men and women, I think there's this thing where so many men have been taught that they can't embody their emotions. But what we always hear is things like men can't cry and stuff like this. But men, when we see the wild man, for example, it's like you're supposed to be running out through the woods, just screaming and and climbing trees and letting out that emotion in a way that's very primal, and in a way that allows it to move through your body. And yoga is another great way of kind of expressing that and moving that throughout the body. And then doing that creates such a state of flow within you that then you don't have this pent up stuff all the time, and you're able to feel so safe and secure within yourself that then you can show up for a woman and kind of create that safety. But it's funny because I was on the phone with my mom today and talking about how I feel disappointed in the lack of chivalry among men now. But simultaneously, I know so many men personally who are really stepping into that divine masculine, and not from a place of feeling like they need to rescue women, but from knowing their responsibility to create a safe world, because men are objectively stronger than women. They're supposed to be for a reason, and they're supposed to use that strength to lead and to create safety around us, and to kind of set the standard in that way. So hearing more and more men kind of come to that place, I know I've heard more and more men come to that place, and I feel like with so many of the events that are happening in the world, that is triggering this kind of primal instinct in a lot of males again to want to step up and really start to do that. And then at the same time, we also have males who are responding by just dissociating and getting an AI girlfriend. But I really do think that there is this movement where a lot of people are starting to, because everything is so polarizing now, because we're really seeing the extremes of every spectrum at this point. I think it is really eye-opening to people and enlightening, and making them step into parts of themselves that they either repressed or maybe just didn't know how to step into before, because they didn't feel like they had that kind of group support. But now, like you said, you have a men's group, and there are more and more men doing that kind of thing, and stepping into that.
And no, and it was really cool to hear that. And it was cool how, like, what we all kind of came up with was actually, kind of validated what you were talking about as well, because it is, man. And that's why, it is, as a man, you have to be in touch with your divine feminine. You have to have kind of that balance going on. You have to understand the purpose of the divine masculine with you in you.
Right.
Yes, that's prominent, as well, because you are a man, but you also have the divine feminine within you too. And that is something that, a lot of men, they shy away from. they negate, you know. And then ultimately what it is finding that balance within yourself. And when you do eventually cultivate that Heros Gamos within you, and you do cultivate that balance, it starts to open a door to a deeper perspective that it seems like not a lot of men in our collective have. So that was really cool to like hear that from you. That's cool. Like, you know, you're like, I like safe, but that's what we want to do. I mean, ultimately what we want to do is we want to make this a safe place, you know, and we do. And we want to make a stable and secure foundation for the divine feminine to channel spirit, because you guys do. You guys, and you know, it was funny. I had a and he wasn't wrong when he said this. So I actually had I know I've talked about this before, guys. I'll kind of keep it TLDR. I got to sit and chill with a Cherokee Native American elder. He did the eagle dance for us, which was actually like really cool, because you don't get to see the eagle dance unless you're part of the tribe. So like, you know, it was really awesome. And I got time to sit with him and chat with them for a little bit after, talk about star beings, creation stories, things like that. And he looked at me, he goes, you know, as a man, did you have to work for your spiritual abilities and your spiritual knowing? And I said, yes, I did. I did. I was kind of always this way. Like I've always been connected, but in, you know, some ways I did have to work for it. And he goes, see, this is why women have it naturally, because women are of the earth. They have a direct connection to the divine. They're portals for life. And he said, you know, this is why women are such naturals at channeling the divine spirit. He goes, men can do it too, but men are the stars. They're the star beings. They have to work a little bit in order to cultivate this kind of connection within themselves. And so I kind of almost see that. Now, don't get me wrong, there's exceptions to the rule. I was a little bit of an exception to the rule, but one of the things I had to do is I had to work a little bit harder and push even further in some ways to get to where I am today. So I just kind of wanted to share that, because it is interesting. You know, you guys are portals for life. You do have a natural connection to the divine spirit. And yeah, so that makes a lot of sense. All right, let's talk about today. Let's get to the meat and potatoes. And then before we kind of sign off, I do want you to talk about your courses a little bit, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Yeah, and I got guys, of course, I have all of her links in the bottom of the YouTube and the Rumble descriptions if you do want to check out Layton's websites, her socials, and her courses. So Charlie Kirk was shot dead today. I haven't had as much time as I would have liked, because I was at work when this happened, to kind of dig into the event. I did, however, see the video. And when I did see the video, I didn't want to damn it, because apparently they were reporting he was in somewhat of a stable condition at first before they announced his death.
Yeah.
But I did see the video, and once I saw what happened, I was like, there's no way he's surviving that. And I come from a perspective of this, you know, don't get me wrong, I don't agree with what everything Charlie Kirk said. However, I had a world of respect for him in the sense that he basically does what I do. I mean, maybe I'm not on the level of him yet. I mean, he's going out to college camp. He was going out to college campuses and asking questions. But you know, so that's where it kind of hit me a little bit. I was like, man, dude, I was like, I can't believe this. But I do think there is something occult oriented with what happened. I do think that this was definitely an inside job of some kind. Just based on what I'm seeing here. So I don't know if you've had time to kind of look into it and kind of research it. And I kind of want to get your thoughts on what you think happened and how this kind of all came to be, because even here in Colorado, it just seems like, so I call the parasite class, there's a section of them, I call them the Invisible College. And what the Invisible College is the collective of secret occult orders and intelligence agencies that actually manifest the false matrix reality. And so now that I gave you that kind of tidbit, it looks like the Invisible College like really had to pump out multiple events today. It looks like they were really trying to get a hit on our timeline in some way. So I want to get your thoughts on this incident. What do you think actually is going on when it comes to this? And what kind of significance could this potentially have for us moving forward?
Well, First of all, I just want to say, my prayers are really with his family. I felt absolutely devastated finding out about what happened with him. I felt really shocked, and it's sad that that's kind of the point that we are at right now, and that this had to happen. I honestly cried a lot when I saw
It
it
choked
because
me up too. It
yeah,
choked me up a little bit too, because like I said, like I had a world of respect for the dude. And
me too.
even though we had different opinions on Christ,
Yeah.
he had a foundation in Christ too. So
Mhm.
like that's where it hit me. But continue, yes.
No, and I agree. I mean, it's we are at a place where we just it should not be socially acceptable to celebrate the death of someone just because, you may not have agreed with them with everything. There were definitely things I didn't agree with him on, and simultaneously I really respected him so much because I thought that, at least from what I had seen of him, and I had watched a lot of debates that he had done, I thought that he was such a respectful, compassionate person.
He was.
And I saw him be blatantly attacked by people left and right, and he really held his own in a respectful, calm, but yet truthful way. And I think he was a great example of kind of how to do that. And when I first heard that he had been shot in the neck, and saw
Yeah,
the
crazy.
video, I was actually coming back from that hike I told you about, where I was in
Nice.
the woods for a while. So it took me a while to get service when I was coming back to try and kind of figure out what was going on. And by the time I got back, he had passed. And I shouldn't even say passed because he was murdered, and it just shouldn't be sugar coated. But I was talking to my mom about it, and I think there are so many different ways that we can look at this. But one of the things is, I believe that every thought that we have has the potential to become a thought form and kind of take on a
Absolutely.
mind of its own. And then I think if we have enough of those, they can build up into this kind of egregore. And I think that if enough people are on board with the same thoughts and kind of all feeding into it, then it becomes this collective egregore that is influencing people on a mass level. And we can definitely see that right off the bat, where there are so many people who are very clearly influenced and under the influence of some sort of egregore that has completely desensitized them to human life. Which I think, and a lot of this is coming from young people, and I really don't think it's their fault. Not to say that they don't have any responsibility in it, because we all
Mhm.
do, and we all have to make certain choices. But I think this is what they've been raised in, to kind of desensitize them and bring them to this place anyway. So I think that on a spiritual level, I think that there has been a really big spiritual battle against people like Charlie. But I think this I wouldn't say that it's specifically because he was, a fundamentalist Christian. I think this is anyone
Mhm.
who is working on behalf of God in the way that resonates with them, and they're working to reach other people. And what Charlie did was he wanted to bridge a gap. He saw this huge political divide, and he put himself into dangerous situations. I mean, he has security for a reason. Again and again and again, in order to try to bridge this gap and to try to reach people who other people have deemed unreachable. I go on TikTok, and from the safety of my home, talk to the same groups of people that he's talking to. And even just through the internet, the death threats and the things that people say to you, he put
Oh yeah.
himself directly in that, and was brave enough to do that. And so I think there was an element of spiritual warfare, for sure, where there are these mass egregores of so many people hating him and wanting to take him out. However, I also believe that there is an inside job element, where I think that the mass egregores that kind of take over us are not always organic. I think that they are often influenced, and we know that things like voice to skull technology exist. We know that if you are under the influence of certain medications, which a lot of the people that are hating against him tend to be on, that it can open you up to certain things. It's not to say
Oh,
that that's
absolutely.
how everyone is going to respond to it, but the way that that technology works is that the brain has to operate at a certain frequency and be putting off certain wavelengths. And so if I don't know, let's say 100 people all take the same medication, because of genetics, they're not all going to operate at the same frequency. However, certain people who are genetically predisposed to this are going to enter into that wavelength, and then they are significantly more impacted by these technologies that can then control people at this specific frequency. And so I think that that is a very large possibility, and I think that's how a lot of inside job type things happen,
Oh, yeah.
where there's this egregore that is implanted like a parasite into someone or into a group of people, and then it's kind of like, well, whoever this manifests through is who it manifests through, and that's how we can get away with certain things not being so easily traced back. Although it'll be interesting to see what happens as more information comes out, because as we know, how often do we find out, oh, this person's father was, CIA, or things like that. And so I think we're still very early in the game, and we don't have a lot of information on what happened here. So it'll be interesting to see. But I think the spiritual element is just undeniable. I mean, he's not even a politician. He was just a public figure, and the things that he was promoting were strong values that, regardless of whether or not we agree with everything he said, the way he goes about it, or was going about it, was absolutely transformational, on mass levels and influencing a lot of people. And that is very threatening to people who don't want anyone to think original thoughts or think outside of the box. And
Oh, absolutely, man. And no, it is. And to me, it seemed, because, and this is where I feel it is, he had a foundation in Christ.
mhm,
And and that's something I have too. I have a foundation in Christ as well.
mhm.
Don't get me wrong. Like I said, I see Christ a little bit differently than he does. But
Right.
but it's that foundation in Christ that is intimidating to them as well. I feel, in a lot of ways, because when you're utilizing that foundation in Christ, especially
Mm,
on your spiritual evolution. And that's why I think Christ is a great foundation to start with. I do.
mm,
Where I think a lot of people lose at it, though, is they become so stuck in the fundamentalism aspect of it,
yeah.
and they get so stuck in seeing the church as an authority,
Mm,
when it comes to deciphering scriptures.
yes.
And that's kind of why I say, like, your only authority as a Christian is the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. The church is not an
Mhm,
authority to you on how to decipher scripture. You have the power within yourself to decipher that scripture in the way
mhm,
that is meant for you to see. And so it's threatening to them. It is. And I'm not trying to even play the fundamentalist Christian card, but even my shows, like, even my I do a church on Sunday called Church of True Christ. And
mhm,
we try to discuss real Christ, at least in our eyes, on how it's on how it really is. It's about embodying the teachings. It's not about worship. It's about
mhm,
embodying what Christ said, and living through that embodiment. And it is. And even that gets shadow banned. That gets negative things said towards it and all that. It is. It's
mhm.
almost like there's an egregore against this. And I
Oh
think
yeah.
really it ultimately is because Christ, in my eyes, is an awakener. He's a revealer.
Mhm,
He came here to shake things up, show us, that we're being kind of held in a false reality at this point in time. And you have a divine spark within you. And all of this stuff. And I do feel that's why, the church also painted him in a light to make what he did seem like something that's unattainable for us. in order to deter people from looking further into that and seeing that that is a possibility. But I think that had a lot to, plus, because he was such a spiritual man, who had a connection with the divine. When you're a spiritual man, and you have a connection with the divine, you can project that energy in a way that moves mountains. It is what it is, and that was threatening to them. It was threatening against their agenda. The one thing I'm going to say about it too, before we kind of start to wind down and we talk about your courses a little bit, the thing about this, yes, it's horrible he died, and my prayers go out to his family. And I'll even say it like this, Charlie. I respected the hell out of you. I didn't really agree with a lot of the things you said, but the fact that you had the courage and the bravery to go out there and stare fear in the face and still do what you did, that deserves a world of respect. But the one thing is, yes, we can be upset about this, but guys, the one thing I want to say to everybody in the audience tonight is, let's not forget where the division in this country truly comes from. Okay. It is not your fellow human being. It is not your neighbor that lives next to you. It is not your neighbor that's across the street. It's not the guy you see on the bus every day. It's not the cashier at the gas station. All right. This is not where the division comes from. You want to be angry at somebody? Be angry at the United States government, the CIA, the FBI, and the DOD, because they are the ones that pitted us against each other. And that's why I know a lot of people think what I have to say is unrealistic at this point. But, for a while, maybe in the past, I entertained this system as maybe being somewhat potentially salvageable. This system is not salvageable, guys. And this is going to continue unless something is done about it. And I know I get kind of harsh sometimes when I say this, but it really is. It's at the point where we all kind of need to pull up our big boy pants and our big girl pants. And we need to do something about this, because the road that we're going on at this fucking point, we're looking at walking into, even as Layton was putting it, we're walking into that dystopian frequency if we allow this to continue any further. And yes, I understand there's a great bit of fear when I say something like this. Of course, I sense the collective fear when I say something like this. We need to burn this down and start anew. And there's a great sense of fear. But the one thing that I can say, real quick, I'm going to just highlight this. I'm not promoting him as a transformational thought leader. All right, I'm going to say that. I legit said a few times that I didn't agree with everything he said. Do I think he should have been shot because I didn't agree with what he said? Absolutely not. He's a living, breathing human being, okay, who had a family, who had kids, who had a wife, okay? He's out there doing what he feels is right. Just like I'm sitting here in front of this computer screen doing what I think is right. Okay, so I'm not calling him a transformational thought leader. I'm having respect for somebody who had courage to look what he saw as people who looked at him as an enemy in the face and freaking still spoke his mind and was the individual that could sit there and handle that kind of flashback, dude. And that's where I'm coming from, Kyle and Cody. So I just want you to think about that, because I'm that way with you guys too. Okay. I mean, we don't agree on everything, dude, but I have love and respect for the both of you. So take that kind of same approach with what we're talking about here. But as I'm saying, I sense the collective fear, when I say something like that. But ultimately, the one thing I can promise all of you here, okay, is ignore your conditioning. It's not going to be some kind of lawless wasteland where people are going to be raping, pillaging, and burning shit everywhere. Okay. Get the Mad Max thing out of your minds. Okay. There will be some kind of organization that will take hold. We will figure something out. But at this point in time, guys, this is going to continue if we don't stand up and do something about it. And I am just going to leave it at that. So Layton, before we close out, I want to talk to you about your courses. Let's talk about your website real quick. So what kind of courses are you offering? And I know the website's Psychic Somatics, and it is kind of an esoteric spiritual school. But if you don't mind diving into what you do a little bit for everybody who might be interested, that would be awesome.
Sure. Well, I'm very passionate about somatics. I'm a somatic practitioner, and I believe that the nervous system and healing our nervous system is the key not only to our physical health but also to our spiritual health. And I think that that is why the government loves to attack our nervous system so much with these different technologies, because they can separate us from our spirit that way, not without our consent, but that's what they're working to do. And so I think that when we are aware of that, the more that we can connect to ourselves and become embodied, the more sovereign we become, and the less power they have over us. And so I like to incorporate that into my work and teaching. And then my spiritual framework is esoteric Christianity, but I like to teach it through the lens of applied anthroposophy. So my first course is called Overcoming the Lower Doppelganger, and it's through the lens of anthroposophy and the work of Rudolf Steiner. And so it's not about bypassing the shadow or anything. It's about learning how to no longer be controlled by it. And I feel like I have a lot of experience with that, because I used to be extremely controlled by mine and had no self-control whatsoever, and just was completely locked in that lower trauma state. And so I think a lot of people who have been through addiction or self-harm or suicidality, or just feeling for whatever reason possessed by their shadow in some way can kind of benefit from that course. And then I have a course called Awakening Higher Clairvoyance that's also through the lens of anthroposophy. And it's about how, first and foremost, I believe every single individual is psychic. I believe we all have psychic capabilities. But I think that through the strengthening of our individuality and through our morals, that we can actually access higher spirituality than we really knew was possible. And so I talk about character development in that. I talk about different spiritual exercises to kind of create that sense of embodiment. I talk about the nervous system. I talk about spiritual warfare and things like that. I also have a bunch of classes on my website that are for free. And on my YouTube channel, I have a class on mirror work. I have classes. I actually have a series on mirror work. And I have classes on things like healing from psychic trauma and stuff like that. So I kind of am all over the map with things, anything related to the body and spirituality and psychic development. I'm really fascinated by, and I talk about esoteric anatomy a lot, and that's just kind of what I do.
Very amazing. I like it. I like it. I like that you come from Steiner's approach, but you also have the esoteric aspects of Christianity in there as well. Because dude, that's one thing. I mean, I've talked about, I did a show on this, on how metaphysics and Christianity are actually synergistic.
Yes.
And they work with each other. And you look at a lot of modern Christians, and they'll say metaphysics is evil. And I'm like, no, dude. I'm like, have you even looked at comparing and like taking a look at metaphysical concepts and Christianity? I mean, if you look at them side by side, you see like they fit like a glove, dude. Like to me, it's like it's and that's where I mean, I say it a lot. Don't get me wrong. Like even though I bag on modern Christians a lot, I still got love for them. They're getting there. They're close, but they got to just make that final jump and understand, like, hey, the church is not an authority, and that's the biggest thing, and yes, it's a place of gathering and it's a place of discussion, but it's a pastor or a priest is to not dictate to you how to interpret the scripture. That's not supposed to happen. So, but other than that, Layton, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy life and your busy day and all of that to come and sit down and chat with me. This was an amazing conversation. I hope you had a great time too. If you have just a couple of minutes, you can hang out after the show is over. I wanted to chat with you about a couple of things. And
yeah, of course.
other than that, guys, go ahead, check out Divine Creation Gifts. I got the link for Divine Creation Gifts in the Rumble and the YouTube description. Check out my friend David the Lion. Watch his movie. Get a copy of his comic book or get it on Kindle. Support this, guys. This is how we bring New Earth into existence. We support each other in this community. Okay, we go towards each other for the things we need. You need crystals, you need some tinctures. Hit up Divine Creation Gifts. You want some entertainment that's not trying to brainwash you, harvest your loosh, and subconsciously indoctrinate you. Go check out my friend David the Lion. This is how it begins, guys. This is how we start. All right. Thanks again for joining us for another BG Cast Wednesday Live podcast. I will be back next week with Frankie Fearless. He is coming back to the show. The Neo Shaman from New York himself. We are going to be talking about digesting hyperspace. We are going to be breaking down entheogenic medicines, entheogenic ceremonies, the spiritual knowledge and remembrance we can gain from them, and how we can apply it to our everyday lives. So I'm looking forward to having Frank back on the show. It's going to be a good time. Other than that, guys, you know what we say here to close off BG Cast. Stay safe, stay free, have that personal sovereignty and that personal agency. And again, for the love of God, stay away from the Japanese sex bots, and definitely stay away from Japanese grok. Just stay away. We'll catch you guys next.
Collectively together, you were born to rotate with the crowd. You were born to sync with the sacred spiral. The Hercules stream is proof. The cosmos hums the divergent. BG-Cast brings us that Hercules energy. It's here to save the day. You won't stay lost in the dark. Here is your shot with BG Cap beside you. Can we rise alone?